The Middle East is currently undergoing a profound transformation where strategic rivalries, economic stakes, and cultural influences are intertwined. The United States is moving like a tightrope walker, trying to accommodate both Israel and their Arab allies. Meanwhile, China is weaving its own path with the new Silk Road, betting on commercial stability to secure its interests. At the same time, Russia maintains a strong presence, especially in Syria, and it accommodates an ambivalent relationship with Turkey, which for its part is increasingly tense with Israel. In this cauldron of power, the expected stability gives way to a shifting multipolarity, where the Gulf monarchies, and especially Saudi Arabia, are redefining their role and ambitions. Once reliant on the American umbrella and far from having overcome all its challenges, Riyadh is now seeking to establish itself as a central player, spiritual leader of the Arab and Sunni world, but also as a builder of a new regional autonomy. The 2020s crystallized this turning point. Washington's direct influence is being reassessed, Iran has lost its position, and new centers are reshaping the map of power. With the approval of Washington, which has no choice but to reduce its burden and delegate to its partners. It is in this context that Saudi Arabia must rethink its alliances, master the art of compromise, and strengthen its independence. But behind this ambitious repositioning, what is really the Saudi plan? I would like to remind you that all issues of the Terabellum magazine, past and future, are available to our YouTube members who choose to support the channel. With the analyst level, the 12th issue has just been released, and you'll find columns, geographical topics, geopolitics, or defense. This ranges from the Mossad's war against Iran, a methodology to understand the background and manipulations of cartography, the current state of French diplomacy, the beauty of Taiwanese women, and also security in East Africa. I remind you that all 12 issues are available with just one click. You just need to click on the join button and become an analyst. Your action will help support our modest channel, independent and handcrafted since 2018. Thank you all for your loyalty. Enjoy watching. The first objective of Mohammed bin Salman, and not a minor one, is to avoid at all costs being drawn into a conflict with Iran, which would be devastating and even contrary to Saudi development interests and the Vision 2030 plan. This involves a diplomatic rapprochement facilitated by China's intervention. This pragmatism reflects a Saudi willingness to focus its efforts on other strategic fronts it considers a priority. Since the Iranian Revolution of '79, the duo has embodied the fundamental divide in the Middle East, often a source of regional instability, with proxy conflicts in Yemen, Syria, Lebanon, and Iraq. The return to a certain form of dialogue, after years of confrontation, signals a new era. This is facilitated at times by China, but also by the retreat of the Iranian stance, or coexistence, even if fragile, is now seen as a necessity for stability. This pragmatic dialogue is accompanied by concrete measures, such as the establishment of emergency communication mechanisms to prevent incidents, strengthened official exchanges which help limit escalations at the Yemeni border or in the Gulf region. And there was also the visit of the Saudi Minister of Defense to Tehran in 2025, which perfectly highlights this new commitment. This détente does not hide a persistent competition for influence, of course, but it paves the way for a framework that helps reduce the risk of an explosion, thanks to the growing role of China as an economic guarantor and strategic mediator. Obviously, the continuation of this coexistence requires skillful diplomacy that capitalizes on converging interests, whether it's energy stability, trade, or even the fight against certain terrorist groups, while maintaining leverage through partnership with the United States or potentially Israel, if normalization were to happen. In short, Saudi Arabia now thinks first and foremost about its own interests, keeps all options open, navigates between conflicts, and prepares for multipolar shocks. As much as, or even more than Iran, from Saudi Arabia's perspective, it is Turkey that is seen as the main rival. Under the leadership of Erdogan, it has once again become one of the pillars in the Middle East, a force to be reckoned with, very active from Syria to Libya and the Sahel region, with more than a decade of military engagements. In Syria, Ankara was endorsed by Donald Trump as one of the three powers, along with Israel and Saudi Arabia, which are theoretically supposed to ease the American burden in the region and create a new balance. Despite the difficulty of competing militarily with Turkey, Riyadh also has some advantages. By developing a range of diplomatic and economic tools to curb Turkish expansion, notably through financing reconstruction projects in Syria, political support in the new Syria. The commitment of $6.4 billion from Saudi Arabia and Syria is an example, and it was clearly designed to prevent Ankara from completely replacing the role that Iran previously held in the region. The rivalry between the two powers is expressed through their overlapping influences on the Arab and Muslim world, each cultivating its own alliances that fuel a fluctuating competition without any major direct confrontation. Riyadh is still trying to balance rivalry and cooperation, fully aware that economic and security interests make any confrontation risky. It's a textbook case relationship that illustrates the very nature of the now multipolar Middle East, where interests can align. One day, interests favor one player, the next another. As a power, one of Saudi Arabia's biggest weaknesses is probably its military apparatus, which is relatively weak. I refer you to our previous videos. Relatively speaking, Saudi military modernization is no longer limited to just purchasing weapons. It also includes the development of a strategic local industry with massive investments in the Saudi Arabian military industry, which aims to locally produce advanced systems such as drones, secure communication equipment, and even cyber capabilities. This drive for industrialization marks a key step towards strategic autonomy, which is still fragile but structural and promising in the long term. The record budget in 2025 of $78 billion, which represents 7% of Saudi Arabia's gross domestic product, demonstrates the importance given to training, cyber defense, intelligence, the reorganization of forces, including the strengthening of special units adapted to asymmetric conflicts such as those encountered in Yemen. The Saudi Ministry of Defense is also focusing its efforts on creating a local supply chain to reduce its dependence on foreign suppliers. It has become an imperative. In times of major international tensions, the focus is on interoperability with American and Western forces, which still reflects a pragmatic strategy, sometimes aiming to maintain a defensive force capability while adapting the forces to emerging challenges. Between electronic warfare, drones, kamikazes, and cyber attacks, the historic agreements with the United States, signed in 2025, aim to modernize Saudi equipment while transferring an increasing share of maintenance and production to local players. This reflects a pragmatic repositioning by Riyadh, which acknowledges the need to rely on its allies while developing autonomy for its security, and always with the approval of the United States. But here again comes its other complexity. Saudi Arabia signed a mutual defense agreement a few weeks ago with Pakistan, a longtime partner. Riyadh will provide financial power and Islamabad will provide troops and, if needed, a nuclear umbrella. I refer you to our videos on Saudi Arabia to understand why. Mohammed bin Salman balances his policy between modernizing the Saudi army, which he distrusts, and foreign actors like Pakistan. This will make up for Saudi Arabia's lack of experienced combat forces, but it will also help directly counterbalance Turkey. Pakistan and Turkey are also close allies, but Islamabad will always try to avoid getting caught between them. And Riyadh's financial power is a decisive lever in most cases. It remains to be seen now what the command structure of the Pakistani forces in Saudi Arabia will be. In any case, this adds even more overlapping interests, complexity, and multipolarity. You can see it. Mohammed bin Salman is gaining maturity on the geopolitical level and, above all, knows how to use Saudi levers: energy, financial, diplomatic, and influence. Riyadh understands the new American strategy and takes advantage of it to impose political stability, modernize its army and infrastructure, and create jobs. The region is still fragmented by conflicts and power struggles. But since it can't compete with the Turkish military or be like Israel, Riyadh puts money on the table and offers an economic alternative to expand its influence and have a say in the new triumvirate. That's what's happening in Syria, with billions invested to compete with Turkish influence. But also in Lebanon, with a supported initiative to financially help the Lebanese state, which is in a deep economic crisis. But also with Hezbollah, which is adopting a new stance. Don't forget that in June 2024, the Arab League removed Hezbollah from the list of terrorist organizations. All of this is the result of the Iran-Saudi détente and behind-the-scenes diplomatic maneuvering, since the operation was praised by Iran. I refer you to the video.
Sur Israël et la stratégie américaine.
Regional states have no choice but to accept and take advantage of Trump's vision at the moment. But they increasingly see Israel as an emerging, even hegemonic power in Syria, in southern Lebanon, and in the West Bank. And behind the grand speeches about peace in Gaza, Trump is actually mainly trying to save the security architecture he is building in the Middle East. But as you can see, the problem is that we can be skeptical about the sustainability of such a balance. With all these reconfigurations and new rivalries that are already setting the stage for the next battles, this is without even mentioning the emerging external players, with new economic circuits that reduce the traditional dependence on Western partners. Saudi Arabia is the world's leading oil exporter and thus influences major emerging blocs, such as the Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa, and developing powers which are eager for fossil fuels to drive their development. As a result, Saudi Arabia is further strengthening its stature and influence in a changing world order and increasing its strategic room for maneuver. Despite many challenges, it is clear that the reign and strategy of Mohammed bin Salman are adapting to the international context and changes. With the tools at its disposal, taking its geography into account, here are 5 avenues for development regarding Saudi Arabia's geopolitical future. First, the consolidation of an intermediary role. Saudi Arabia will continue its pursuit of strategic autonomy without completely breaking its Western alliances. Thanks to its energy resources and its wealth, it will be able to take advantage of global rivalries to ensure security and economic development, while avoiding the risks of massive military involvement. A flexible stance that will allow it to exploit the contradictions of global powers and position itself as an effective mediator in local conflicts. Second point, the balanced management of regional rivalries. Riyadh will have to skillfully arbitrate between cooperation and competition, especially with Turkey and Israel. Official normalization with Israel will remain a distant prospect, even though Trump will do everything to achieve it. During his term, bilateral security cooperation should intensify, particularly in managing the Palestinian conflict and stabilizing the Levant. However, Saudi Arabia also knows that the triumvirate may be short-lived, as Mohammed bin Salman is as wary of Turkey as he is of Israel. Third point, targeted investments in sovereign military capabilities. The modernization and localization of military industries will be strategic priorities to reduce Saudi Arabia's external dependencies. Fourth point, economic and diplomatic mediation in Syria and Lebanon. The large investments in Syria and the initiatives aimed at offering economic alternatives to Lebanon and Hezbollah show Saudi Arabia's willingness to establish stability and counterbalance rival influences. A strategy of soft geopolitical pressure to prevent Iran from regaining its influence in the Levant, but also to ensure that the void left by Iran is not filled by Turkey or other powers. And finally, fifth point, a pragmatic dialogue with Iran under the sponsorship of China. Although the rivalry between Riyadh and Tehran is structural, coexistence is more than likely, encouraged by common economic and security interests. To counterbalance Turkey and Israel, China's growing role as a mediator guarantees a platform likely to limit the risks of escalation. And Mohammed bin Salman will do everything to avoid being drawn into a devastating war against Tehran. In a Middle East marked by uncertainty and the constant shifting of alliances, Saudi Arabia has adopted a pragmatic strategy, combining economic power, military modernization, and diplomacy.
Voici multivectoriel.
The ability to deal with regional complexity has become an essential asset as the interests of major powers continue to clash in this region, where every player wants to influence the course of events. Now, the kingdom is no longer just a simple ally of the West, but claims a more equidistant role, able to engage in dialogue with both Washington and Beijing and to ease its relations with Tehran. While keeping an eye on regional competition embodied by Turkey and Israel, it remains to be seen whether Riyadh will be able to consolidate this position in the face of the upheaval of an increasingly volatile environment. I hope I have given you some keys to understanding here, and this is a topic we will come back to. Saudi Arabia seems to be giving itself the means to become a major player in the region, and no longer just a simple financial backer. I would also like to remind you that all issues of the Terabellum magazine, past and future, are available to our YouTube members who choose to support the channel. With the analyst level, that makes no less than 12 geopolitical issues to read on international topics. Thank you to our members who support us, and thank you all for your loyalty. Don't forget the simple actions to help this video in the YouTube algorithm. Like, tell us what you think about Saudi Arabia's strategy, and feel free to share. This was Quentin for Terabellum, and see you next time.